He was sitting in seat 1A, wearing a faded hoodie and old sneakers. To the flight attendant, he looked like a mistake. To the arrogant passenger demanding his seat, he looked like a target. But what neither of them knew was that the man they were humiliating wasn't just a passenger. He was Andre Peterson, the man who had secretly acquired the entire airline 20 minutes ago. They didn't just kick a black man out of his seat, they kicked off their new boss. And when he pulled out his phone, the flight didn't take off, but their careers were grounded forever. This is the story of the most expensive mistake in aviation history. The rain lashed against the reinforced glass of JFK's Terminal 4, turning the runway lights into smeared streaks of amber and red. Inside the first-class lounge of Meridian Air, the atmosphere was a vacuum of hushed whispers and clinking crystal, insulated from the chaos of the economy gates below. Andre Peterson sat in the corner, nursing a sparkling water with a twist of lime. He didn't look like the other patrons, while the lounge was filled with men in bespoke Italian suits and women dripping in Cartier. Andre wore a charcoal grey hoodie that had seen better days, black joggers, and a pair of scuffed Nike Dunks. He had a pair of noise-cancelling headphones around his neck and was tapping away intently on a cracked iPad. To the casual observer, he looked like a lucky upgrade, perhaps a musician's assistant or a lottery winner who didn't know how to dress for the occasion. The casual observer would be wrong. Andre wasn't just rich. He was move the market with a whisper, rich. At 34, he was the founder and CEO of Apex Global, a private equity firm that specialized in hostile takeovers of failing legacy companies. He had grown up in the projects of Chicago, fighting for every inch of ground he stood on, and he had never lost that grit. He preferred the hoodie to the suit because it was a filter. It showed him who people really were before they knew what he was worth. Tonight, he wasn't just flying to London for a vacation. He was flying to sign the final papers on a deal that had been 6 months in the making. A deal that was, ironically, regarding the very airline he was flying, Meridian Air. Mr. Peterson. Andre looked up. The lounge attendant, a young woman named Sarah with a kind smile, placed a fresh bowl of warm nuts on his table. Your flight to Heathrow. Flight 882 is boarding in 10 minutes. Can I get you anything else before you head to the gate? I'm good, Sarah. Thank you, Andre said, his voice deep and calm. He slid a $100 bill under his empty glass. For the service? Sarah's eyes widened, but she nodded discreetly. Thank you, sir. Safe travels. Andre packed his iPad into his leather satchel, which was, if one looked closely, a $30,000 Hermes bag, though the wear and tear hid its value well. He stood up, stretching his broad shoulders, and headed toward the gate. He was the first to board, thanks to his global services status. He walked down the jet bridge, the cool air hitting his face, and stepped onto the plane. Boarding pass, the flight attendant at the door said. Her name tag read Jessica. She didn't look up from her manifest, her tone bored and mechanical. Andre held out his phone. She scanned it. A green light beeped. 1A. Jessica looked up then, and her eyebrows knitted together. She scanned him from the sneakers to the hoodie. You're in 1A. That's what the screen says, Andre replied, keeping his tone light. Right, she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. Turn left. First seat on the window. She didn't welcome him aboard. She didn't offer to hang his coat. She just pointed, her eyes already darting behind him to see if a real first-class passenger was coming next. Andre didn't let it bother him. He was used to it. He walked to seat 1A, the prime spot in the cabin, and stowed his satchel. He settled into the wide leather seat, declining the pre-flight champagne from a passing steward, and pulled his hood up slightly to cover his eyes. He just wanted to sleep. It had been a brutal week of negotiations. The cabin began to fill up, the rustle of expensive fabrics, the smell of designer perfumes, the snap of overhead bins. Andre had his eyes closed, drifting, when a loud, braying voice shattered his peace. "This is ridiculous! Absolutely ridiculous!" Andre opened one eye. Standing in the aisle was a man who looked like a caricature of wealth. He was in his 50s, wearing a tan linen suit that was too tight around the waist, a pink dress shirt, and loafers with no socks. His face was flushed red, and he was gesticulating wildly at Jessica, the flight attendant. "Mr. Sterling, please lower your voice," Jessica whispered, though she looked more deferential than annoyed. "I will not lower my voice. The man, Mr. Sterling, barked." "I specifically requested seat 1A. My assistant confirmed it. I always sit in 1A. It is the only seat with the extra legroom bulkhead I need for my sciatica." "I understand, Mr. Sterling," Jessica soothed. But there was a system error. The seat was assigned to another passenger. "Well, unassign it," Sterling snapped. He turned his head and glared directly at Andre. Andre stayed silent, watching the scene unfold with a detached curiosity. He knew exactly who this man was. Carter Sterling, a real estate developer from Connecticut, with a reputation for lawsuits and bankruptcy fraud. Andre's firm had actually looked into buying Sterling's portfolio last year, but passed because the books were too messy. Carter Sterling took a step toward Andre. "Hey, you." Andre slowly pulled down his headphones. "Yes." "You're in my seat," Sterling said, pointing a manicured finger at Andre's chest. "I don't think so," Andre said calmly. "My boarding pass says 1A. I don't care what your little electronic ticket says." Sterling scoffed, looking at Andre's hoodie with open disgust. "I am a Platinum Reserve member. I fly this airline 3 times a week. I paid full fare for this ticket. How did you get this seat Miles Employee Buddy pass?" "I paid for it," Andre said, his voice dropping an octave. "Just like you." "I highly doubt that," Sterling laughed. A cruel, wet sound. He turned back to Jessica. "Honey, look at him. He clearly doesn't belong here. He's making the other passengers uncomfortable. I want him moved. Now." Andre looked around. The other passengers, a mix of business travelers and wealthy tourists, were studiously looking away, pretending not to hear, though their ears were pricked. No one spoke up. Jessica looked at Sterling, then at Andre. She made a quick calculation. Sterling was a loud, frequent flyer who would complain to corporate. Andre was a quiet man in a hoodie who, in her mind, was likely an upgrade mistake or a non-revenue passenger. She stepped toward Andre, her face hardening. The customer service mask dropped. "Sir," Jessica said, her voice sharp. "I'm going to have to ask you to move." Andre didn't blink. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked Jessica in the eye. The air in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Move," Andre repeated. "To where?" "We have a seat available in Economy Plus," Jessica said, waving a hand toward the back of the plane as if she were shooing a fly. "Seat 24B. It has extra legroom. It will be more comfortable for someone like you." Someone like me? Andre asked softly. And what, exactly, does that mean? Jessica flushed, realizing she'd stepped onto thin ice. But she doubled down. Someone who isn't a Platinum Reserve member. Mister, Sterling is our priority customer. There was a double booking. Standard protocol dictates the seat goes to the status holder. That's a lie, Andre said. He knew Meridian Air's protocol better than she did. He had been reading their operational bylaws for 3 weeks during the acquisition due diligence. Protocol for a double booking, which this isn't. By the way, is first come, first served. I checked in yesterday. I boarded first. I am seated. Listen, pal, Carter Sterling interrupted, leaning over so his cologne, something musky and overpowering, wafted into Andre's face. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. I have a meeting in London that is worth more than your entire life's earnings. I need to sleep. I need this seat. You're going to get up, take your little backpack, and go sit in the back where you belong, or I'm going to have you dragged off. Andre looked at Sterling's red, sweating face. He felt a familiar heat rising in his chest, the same heat he felt when he was a kid and store owners followed him around, assuming he was stealing. But Andre was a master of control. He was a CEO. He played chess, not checkers. I'm not moving, Andre stated, leaning back and crossing his legs. He put his headphones back on. Sterling grabbed the headphones and yanked them off Andre's head. The cabin gasped. The silence shattered. Andre slowly stood up. He was 6'3", a tower of muscle built from years of boxing at a high-end gym. He towered over Sterling, who suddenly looked very small and very doughy. Don't, Andre whispered. Ever touch me again? Sterling stumbled back, bumping into the drink cart. He threatened me. Did you hear that? He threatened me. Jessica, get the captain. Get security. Jessica was already on the interphone, her hand shaking slightly. Captain Miller, we have a situation in first class. Disruptive passenger, row 1. Yes, we need removal. She hung up and glared at Andre with a mix of fear and triumph. You've done it now. You could have just taken the free drink in economy. Now you're going to jail. For sitting in my assigned seat, Andre asked incredulously. For assaulting a fellow passenger and disobeying crew instructions. Jessica lied smoothly. She looked at the other passengers. You all saw him lunge at Mr. Sterling, didn't you? A woman in seat 2C, who was clutching a Louis Vuitton purse, nodded vigorously. Yes, he was very aggressive, very scary. Andre looked at the woman. He memorized her face. Complicit. From the cockpit, Captain Miller emerged. He was a stern man with graying temples and 4 stripes on his shoulder. He didn't look like a bad man, just a tired one who wanted to get off the ground before his duty time expired. What is the problem here? Miller asked, his voice booming. Captain, Sterling said, smoothing his rumpled jacket. This man is squatting in my seat. When I politely asked him to verify his ticket, he became violent. He grabbed my arm. My shoulder is throbbing. It was a blatant lie. Andre hadn't touched him. Captain Miller turned to Andre. He didn't ask for Andre's side of the story. He saw the hoodie. He saw the skin color. He saw the respectable businessman pointing a finger. The bias was unconscious, instant, and damning. Sir, the captain said to Andre, grab your bag. You're off this flight. Captain, Andre said, trying one last time to appeal to reason. Check the manifest. I am Andre Peterson. I paid $12,000 for this seat. This man assaulted me. There are cameras. I don't have time for a debate, the captain snapped, checking his watch. We miss our slot in 5 minutes. If you don't walk off this plane on your own 2 feet right now, I'm calling the Port Authority police. And trust me, son, you don't want them dragging you down that aisle. Son, that word hung in the air like a slap. Andre looked at the captain. He looked at Jessica, who was smirking. He looked at Sterling, who was already mentally measuring the legroom in seat 1A. Andre realized there was no winning this argument. Not here. Not with words. The system was designed to protect men like Sterling and punish men like Andre, regardless of the bank account balance. But Andre had something better than an argument. He had the nuclear option. He smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile that didn't reach his eyes. Fine, Andre said. I'll get off. Good choice, Sterling sneered. Andre reached into the overhead bin and grabbed his satchel. He didn't look back at the passengers. He walked past Jessica, who stepped aside as if he were contagious. He walked past the captain. As he stepped onto the jet bridge, the cool, damp air greeting him again, he heard the heavy door of the Boeing 777 slam shut behind him. The lock clicked. They had sealed their fate. Andre didn't walk to the terminal exit. He walked about 20 feet up the jet bridge, stopped, and leaned against the cold metal wall. He pulled out his phone. It was 8:42 p.m. He dialed a number that very few people possessed. It wasn't customer service. It wasn't a lawyer. Richard Ahra. Andre said into the phone when the line picked up. Andre. The voice on the other end was Richard Halloway, the current chairman of the board for Meridian Air. You should be in the air. Did you take off early? No. Richard, I'm standing on the jet bridge of Flight 882. I've just been kicked off the plane. There was a silence on the other end, so profound it felt heavy. You were kicked off, why? Because your captain and flight attendant decided a white real estate developer liked my seat better than I did. They called security. They threatened me with arrest. Oh my God, Richard whispered. Andre, I am so sorry. I will call the gate right now. I'll turn that plane around. No, Andre said, his voice like steel. Don't turn it around. Ground it. Ground it. I want the acquisition signed. Now, email me the final DocuSign. I'm triggering the immediate takeover clause we discussed for next week. I want it effective as of 8:43 p.m. Andre, that's drastic. That triggers the executive restructuring immediately. It gives you total operational control. Send the document, Richard, or I pull the offer completely, and Meridian stock is worth 0 by Monday morning. Okay. Sending it now. Andre watched the email notification pop up on his screen. Subject transfer of ownership. Meridian Airlines. He tapped the screen. He signed his name with his finger. Andre Peterson. He hit submit. It's done, Andre said. I own the airline. You do, Richard said, sounding terrified. What do you want to do? Andre looked back down the jet bridge toward the plane, where the engines were beginning to whine. Cancel the flight, Andre said, and tell the gate agent to bring the stairs back. I'm coming back aboard, but this time, I'm not a passenger. Inside the cabin of Flight 882, the mood had shifted from tension to a relaxed, luxurious hum. With the disturbance removed, the first-class ecosystem had returned to its natural state of entitlement. Carter Sterling was sprawled in seat 1A, Andre's seat. He had kicked off his loafers and was wiggling his toes in the thick carpet, a glass of Dom Perignon in his hand. He looked like a king who had just conquered a very small, Very comfortable country. Finally. Sterling sighed loudly, catching Jessica's eye as she walked past with a hot towel. That was unpleasant. You handled it well, sweetheart. I'll be sure to mention your name in my commendation letter to corporate. Meridian needs more staff who know how to prioritize high-value clients. Jessica beamed, the adrenaline of the confrontation fading into relief. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. We just want to ensure a pleasant flight for everyone. Some people just don't understand the rules. Exactly, Sterling said, taking a sip of champagne. He probably thought because he had a few bucks for a ticket, he owned the place. It's a lack of class, really. The heavy aircraft jolted slightly as the tug began to push it back from the gate. The safety video began to play on the screens, a cheerful animation of diverse passengers smiling and buckling seatbelts. The engines began to spool up, a deep, rising whine that vibrated through the floorboards. Sterling closed his eyes, ready to sleep all the way to London. In the cockpit, Captain Miller was going through the final checklist. Flaps set to 5, auto brake RTO, trim set. Check. His first officer, a younger man named Dan, replied, Tower has cleared us for taxi to runway 4 left. Miller released the parking brake. All right, let's get this bird in the air. I'm already 20 minutes past my dinner time. Just as the plane began to turn onto the taxiway, a sharp, urgent chime rang out in the cockpit. It wasn't the flight attendant call button. It was the ACARS system, the text-based communication link between the plane and the airline's operations center. Simultaneously. The radio crackled. Meridian 882 Tower. The air traffic controller's voice came through, sounding confused. Hold position immediately. Do not proceed to the runway. Miller frowned, slamming on the brakes. The massive Boeing 777 lurched to a halt, causing the china in the first-class galley to rattle. Tower. Meridian 882 holding, Miller said. Annoyed. What's the problem? We have our slot. Meridian 882. We just got a call from your dispatch. And the Port Authority. You are ordered to return to the gate immediately. Miller looked at Dan. Return to gate. Is it a mechanical issue? Checking systems, Dan said, scanning the monitors. Everything is green. No engine warnings. No hydraulic leaks. Miller keyed the mic. Tower. Confirm reason for return. We are perfectly healthy here. Dispatch has declared a code black on your flight. Captain, that's a corporate grounding order. You need to go back to gate B14. Now. Code black. Miller's blood ran cold. He had been flying for 30 years. He had heard of code black, but he had never seen one. It wasn't used for weather or mechanical issues. It was used for security threats or catastrophic company-wide shutdowns. Roger. Tower. Returning to gate, Miller said, his voice tight. He picked up the interphone to the cabin. Jessica, prepare the cabin for gate return. Do not open the doors until I say so. Gate return, Jessica asked, her voice echoing into the cockpit. Captain, the passengers are going to be furious. Mr. Sterling is finally asleep. I don't care about Mr. Sterling, Miller snapped, the stress breaking his composure. Just do it. As the plane was towed back to the gate, the confusion in the cabin grew. Passengers started pulling out their phones, realizing the plane wasn't moving forward. Sterling woke up with a snort as the plane came to a final stop. He looked out the window and saw the familiar jet bridge moving toward the door. What is this? Sterling demanded loudly. Why are we back at the gate? I have a meeting. Jessica hurried over, looking flustered. I'm not sure, Mr. Sterling, the captain said it's a corporate order. It might be a technical glitch. Incompetence. Sterling slammed his hand on the armrest. I'm tweeting about this. This is unacceptable. The seatbelt sign pinged off. But instead of the usual rush to stand up, everyone stayed seated, sensing something was wrong. The main cabin door hissed, the heavy lock disengaged. Jessica put on her customer service smile and opened the door, expecting a mechanic or maybe a gate agent with some paperwork. She didn't see a mechanic. She saw the station manager, Mr. Henderson, the highest-ranking Meridian employee at JFK. He was a nervous man who usually stayed in his office. Behind him were 2 Port Authority police officers, and standing between them, hands in the pockets of his grey hoodie, was Andre Peterson. Jessica's smile froze. Her stomach dropped through the floor. The silence in first class was absolute. It wasn't the polite silence of a lounge. It was the terrified silence of a courtroom before a verdict is read. Carter Sterling, who had been mid-rant, choked on his words. He stared at Andre, his eyes bulging. How the hell did you get back here? Security. He broke through security. Sterling unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up, pointing a trembling finger at the police officers. Officers, arrest this man. He was kicked off this flight for assault, and now he's stalking me. The 2 police officers didn't move toward Andre. They stood behind him, arms crossed, their faces impassive. They weren't there to arrest Andre. They were his escort. Andre stepped onto the plane. The damp smell of rain still clung to his hoodie, mixing with the scent of warmed nuts and fear in the cabin. He didn't look at Sterling. He looked at Jessica. You, Andre said. His voice was quiet. But in the silent cabin, it sounded like a thunderclap. You kicked me off because you said this gentleman had priority status, Jessica stammered, backing away until she hit the bulkhead wall. Sir, I was just following protocol. Mr. Sterling is a platinum reserve. Protocol, Andre repeated, tasting the word like it was poison. I know the protocol. I wrote the new one about 3 minutes ago. Captain Miller burst out of the cockpit, his hat askew. What is going on here? Why is my flight grounded, and why is he back on my plane? He looked at the station manager. Henderson, get this passenger off immediately. I already evicted him. Mr. Henderson, usually a man who avoided conflict, stepped forward. He looked pale, sweating profusely under the cabin lights. Captain Miller, Henderson said, his voice cracking. Stand down. Stand down. Miller's face turned purple. I am the captain of this vessel I have authority over. You have authority over nothing, Andre interrupted. He walked past Jessica, effectively trapping her in the galley corner, and stood in the aisle, looming over the seated passengers. He turned to face Captain Miller and Sterling. Captain Miller, Andre said, pulling his phone out and turning the screen toward them. You kicked me off because you thought I didn't matter. You thought a man in a hoodie couldn't possibly be as important as a man in a cheap suit. I made a command decision, Miller argued, though his confidence was wavering as he saw the station manager bowing his head. And you made the wrong one, Andre said. My name is Andre Peterson. I am the CEO of Apex Global, and as of 8:43 p.m. tonight, I am the sole owner of Meridian Airlines. A collective gasp swept through the cabin. The woman in 2C covered her mouth. Sterling laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. You own the airline. Don't make me laugh. You're a thug in a sweatshirt. You probably stole a credit card to buy that ticket. Andre looked at Sterling with a mixture of pity and boredom. Mr. Henderson. Yes. Mr. Peterson. The station manager responded instantly, snapping to attention. Please inform Mr. Sterling, who signs your paycheck as of tonight. It's Mr. Peterson, sir, Henderson said to the room. The acquisition was finalized 10 minutes ago. We received the directive from the board of directors. Mr. Peterson has total operational control. Sterling's face went from red to a ghostly white. He slumped back into the seat, Andre's seat. Andre turned his attention back to the crew. He looked at Jessica. Tears were now streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I didn't know, she whispered. Sir, please, I have a mortgage, I have kids, and I had a ticket, Andre said coldly. You didn't care about my rights until you found out I had the power to take away yours. That's not a mistake. Jessica, that's a character flaw. I don't want people with that character flaw representing my brand. He turned to Captain Miller. And you're supposed to be the leader of this ship. You're supposed to be objective. Instead, you acted as a bouncer for a bully. Mr. Peterson, Miller said, his voice trembling, trying to salvage his dignity. I have 30 years of flying experience. You can't just... I can, Andre said, and I am. He looked at both of them. You're fired, both of you. Get your bags and get off my plane. You can't do this, Jessica wailed. Union rules. I just bought the union contracts too, Andre said calmly. There's a clause for gross misconduct. Profiling a passenger and kicking him off without cause falls under that. You're done. Leave now. The humiliation was total. Under the gaze of 50 passengers, Captain Miller and Jessica had to retrieve their bags. The captain, stripped of his authority, looked like an old man. Jessica, stripped of her sneer, looked like a frightened child. They walked up the aisle, the walk of shame they had intended for Andre, now theirs to endure. As they exited the plane, the cabin was dead silent. Andre turned to seat 1A. Carter Sterling was trying to make himself as small as possible. He was staring at the floor, refusing to make eye contact. Mr. Sterling, Andre said pleasantly. Sterling flinched. Look, I was stressed. I have a bad back. I didn't mean... Get up, Andre said. What? Get up! Sterling scrambled out of the seat, clutching his briefcase. Where do you want me to go, economy? No, Andre said. You're not flying economy. You're not flying Meridian. Ever again. But I have to get to London. Not on my planes, Andre said. I'm banning you for life. From this airline, and thanks to my alliance partnerships, from pretty much every other major carrier flying across the Atlantic. You can swim to London for all I care. This is illegal, I'll sue, Sterling shouted, desperation taking over. You can try, Andre said, stepping aside to let the police officers step forward. But before you call your lawyer, you might want to talk to these officers, because while I was in the terminal, I had my team run a background check on you. Interesting things. Those bankruptcy filings you falsified last year. The FBI has been looking for a reason to pin you down. I just gave them your location. Sterling's jaw dropped. The police officers moved in. Carter Sterling. One officer said, "We have a warrant for your arrest for wire fraud and embezzlement. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." The click of handcuffs echoed through the first-class cabin as Sterling was dragged off the plane, kicking and screaming about his rights. Andre stood in the empty aisle. He smoothed out his hoodie. He looked at the empty seat 1A. Then he looked at Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson, we need a new flight crew. How long? I have a reserve crew on standby. Sir, maybe 45 minutes. Good, Andre said. Get them here, and find someone to clean seat 1A. It smells like cheap cologne and failure. Andre turned to the rest of the passengers. They were staring at him with awe and terror. I apologize for the delay. Everyone, Andre announced, his voice shifting to a professional, charming tone. Open bar is on the house for the duration of the flight, and everyone in economy move them up to economy plus. We're going to have a lot of empty seats now. He sat down in seat 1A, pulled his headphones back over his ears, and closed his eyes. But the story wasn't over. The fallout was just beginning. The flight to London was smooth, but the atmosphere inside the cabin of Flight 882 remained charged with a strange, nervous electricity. The new flight crew, called in from reserve, moved with a terrifying level of precision. They treated Andre not just as a VIP, but as a volatile emperor who might dissolve their pensions if the coffee was lukewarm. Andre, however, wasn't interested in being waited on. He had connected to the plane's Wi-Fi and was watching a disaster unfold in real time on his iPad. While Andre had been settling the score with Sterling and the captain, the woman in seat 2C, Mrs. Galloway, a socialite with a heavy online following, had been busy. She hadn't recorded Sterling's initial aggression. She hadn't recorded the captain's bias. Instead, she had started recording exactly when Andre stood up to confront them. The video she posted to Twitter and TikTok was captioned, "Psychotic passenger assaults elderly man and terrorizes crew. #air rage, #Meridian Air." The angle was damning. It showed Andre towering over Sterling. It showed Andre pointing a finger at the captain. It showed Jessica crying. But it cut off right before the police arrived to arrest Sterling. The internet, fueled by lack of context, and Mrs. Galloway's hysterical commentary, was eating it up. Who is this guy? Throw him in jail. Why isn't security tasering him? Meridian Air needs to ban thugs like this. Then, the news broke that Andre had bought the airline. The narrative shifted instantly, but not in his favor. The headlines screaming across CNN and BBC were not about justice, they were about madness. Hostile takeover in the sky, billionaire. Hijacks, airline to fire crew mid-flight. Is Andre Peterson unstable stock? Plunges 12% after CEO's mid-air meltdown. Andre watched the stock ticker on his screen. The market was reacting to the uncertainty. Meridian Air's stock was in freefall. He had just lost nearly $200 million in paper value in the last hour. His satellite phone buzzed. It was a conference call request. The board of directors. Andre plugged in his headset. "This is Peterson." "Andre, have you lost your mind?" The voice belonged to Silas Thorne, the vice chairman of Meridian. Thorne was part of the old guard men who had run the airline into the ground while taking massive bonuses. He was currently sitting in the London headquarters. "We are watching the news. You fired a senior captain. You had a platinum member arrested. You're destroying the brand image. I'm cleaning up the brand image." "Silas," Andre replied, keeping his voice low so the passengers wouldn't hear. "I removed a liability. Sterling was a fraud, and the crew was discriminatory. I won't have that culture at my company. It's not your company yet," Silas barked. "The deal is signed, but the regulatory bodies haven't cleared the transfer of operational certificates. We can file an injunction. We can claim you are mentally unfit to lead due to this incident. We can void the sale. Andre's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare. You need my capital. The airline is bankrupt without my injection. We'd rather be bankrupt than owned by a cowboy who creates PR disasters because his feelings got hurt. Silas sneered. We are holding an emergency vote in London the moment you land. We're going to invoke the moral turpitude clause in the contract to strip you of CEO status before you even step off that plane. Enjoy the flight. Mr. Peterson, it'll be your last as an owner. The line went dead. Andre sat back, staring at the clouds below. He realized this wasn't just about one racist passenger anymore. This was a trap. The board had wanted his money, but they didn't want him. They were using this incident and Mrs. Galloway's edited video to paint him as an angry, aggressive black man who couldn't be trusted with power. They wanted to take his cash, void his control, and keep their comfortable seats. He looked across the aisle. Mrs. Galloway was sipping champagne, typing furiously on her phone, undoubtedly feeding more lies to the press. She looked over at him and gave a smug, tight-lipped smile, clutching her purse as if he were going to steal it. She had no idea she was sitting next to the only man who could see the data traffic flowing through the plane's server. Andre opened his laptop. He didn't just own the plane, he owned the digital infrastructure. He logged into the onboard server with his new admin credentials. He accessed the localized cloud storage for the flight. Modern planes are surveillance states. There are cameras in the cockpit. There are cameras in the galleys. And, crucially, Meridian Air had recently installed safety and security cameras in the first-class cabin to monitor for liability issues, cameras that were discreetly hidden in the bulkhead. Andre pulled up the feed from 45 minutes ago. There it was, high-definition video and crystal-clear audio. It showed Sterling initiating the conflict. It showed Sterling grabbing Andre's headphones. It showed the captain refusing to listen. It showed the station manager confirming the police warrant for Sterling. It showed everything. Andre smiled. He downloaded the file. Then he drafted an email, but he didn't send it to the press. Not yet. He needed to walk into the lion's den first. Heathrow Airport was a zoo. When Flight 882 touched down, the tarmac wasn't just occupied by baggage handlers. It was lined with press vans. The narrative had spiraled so out of control that people were treating Andre's arrival like a criminal extradition. Andre bypassed the main terminal. He had the pilot taxi to the private aviation side, where a black car was waiting. He didn't speak to the reporters screaming his name through the fence. He got into the car and gave the driver one address, Meridian House, City of London. The headquarters of Meridian Air was a glass and steel monolith in the financial district. Andre walked into the lobby, still wearing his hoodie and joggers. The receptionist looked terrified. Security guards stepped forward, hands hovering over their belts, but they froze when they saw the determination in his eyes. "I'm going to the boardroom," Andre said. It wasn't a question. He took the elevator to the 40th floor. He could hear the shouting before the doors even opened. He pushed open the double oak doors. Inside, 12 men and women in expensive suits were seated around a massive mahogany table. Silas Thorne stood at the head, red-faced, pointing at a projection screen that showed the plummeting stock price. "He is a liability," Thorne was shouting. "We vote to trigger the clause immediately. We oust him, keep the liquidity injection as a penalty fee, and reinstate Miller as a hero pilot who stood up to a tyrant." "Touching speech. Silas," Andre said, stepping into the room. The room fell silent. All heads turned. "You can't be in here," Thorne stammered. Security. I am the owner of the building. Silas, security works for me, Andre said, walking calmly to the head of the table. You're sitting in my chair. Thorne didn't move. We just took a vote. Andre, the moral turpitude clause. You are removed as CEO, effective immediately. You attacked a passenger. You abused your power. The video proves it. Ah, the video, Andre said. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket and tossed it onto the polished wood table. It slid across the surface and stopped right in front of Thorne. What is this, the rest of the movie? Andre said. See, Mrs. Galloway in seat 2C is a very talented editor. But she missed the first act. And the third act. Andre plugged his laptop into the projector system, overriding Thorne's presentation. Watch, Andre commanded. The screen flickered to life. The board members watched in stunned silence as the high-definition security footage played. They saw Carter Sterling berating the flight attendant. They heard the racial slurs he muttered under his breath. They saw him physically snatch the headphones off Andre's head, an undeniable assault. Then, they saw Captain Miller. They heard him call Andre son. They heard him threaten arrest without cause. But the real kicker was the audio Andre had pulled from the cockpit voice recorder, which was also synced to the data stream. Captain Miller on tape. I don't care if he has a ticket. I don't like the look of him. Let's get him off so Sterling can stop whining. I want to get to London early. I have a date. The room was deadly quiet. This wasn't a CEO melting down. This was a massive lawsuit waiting to happen against the airline. For discrimination. That's unfortunate, Thorne said, loosening his tie. But it doesn't excuse you firing the whole crew mid-air. That is erratic behavior. Is it? Andre clicked to the next slide. Because while I was in the air, I did some reading. I went through the internal comms of this board for the last 6 months. Andre pointed at a woman on the left, the CFO. You, Margaret. You sent an email 3 weeks ago telling maintenance to ignore the landing gear sensor warnings on the 777 fleet because repairs are too expensive this quarter. You risked hundreds of lives to boost the EBITDA for the sale. Margaret turned pale. He pointed at Silas Thorne. And you, Silas. You knew Carter Sterling was using our cargo flights to move undeclared assets into the Cayman Islands. You didn't ban him because he was paying you a consulting fee of $50,000 a month. That's why you were so desperate to protect him. That's why you're trying to oust me. Because if I take over, I see the books. Thorne slumped back, his arrogance evaporating instantly. This isn't a hostile takeover, Andre said, leaning his hands on the table. This is a crime scene cleanup. Andre pulled out his phone. I have the press downstairs. I have the unedited video. And I have the emails proving systemic fraud, safety violations, and embezzlement by this board. Wait, Thorne pleaded, holding up his hands. Andre, let's be reasonable. Think of the stock price. If you release this, the company dies. The company is already dead, Andre said coldly. It died when you decided profit was more important than people. But I can resurrect it. Just not with you. What do you want? Margaret whispered. Resignations, Andre said. All of you. Right now. You walk away with nothing. No golden parachutes. No stock options. You leave quietly. And I won't hand these emails to the serious fraud office. You can't do that, Thorne spat. Try me, Andre said. I'm the guy who bought an airline just to fire a racist pilot. Do you really want to test how far I'll go to fire a corrupt board? One by one, the board members looked at the evidence, then at each other. They realized they were outmatched. Andre Peterson hadn't just brought money to the table, he had brought the guillotine. Margaret was the first to stand. She took a pen and signed her resignation on the notepad in front of her. Then another director, then another. Finally, only Silas Thorne remained. "You're making a mistake," Thorne hissed. "You don't know how to run an airline." "Maybe not," Andre smiled. "But I know how to take out the trash," Thorne signed. "Now," Andre said, picking up the USB drive. "Get out of my building," as the board members shuffled out, defeated and broken. Andre walked to the window. He looked out at the London skyline. He was exhausted. He was alone. But he had won. However, there was one loose end. The woman in seat 2C, Mrs. Galloway. Her video was still viral. And unlike the board, she wasn't an employee he could fire. He needed to handle her differently. He needed the final stroke of karma. The boardroom was empty, save for the faint scent of stale coffee and defeat. Andre stood alone at the window, watching the London rain. He had decapitated the corrupt leadership of Meridian Air in less than 20 minutes. But the battle for public opinion was still raging. His phone pinged incessantly. The hashtag boycott Meridian was trending globally. Mrs. Galloway's edited video had reached 5 million views. She was currently on a live stream from the first-class lounge at Heathrow, painting herself as a traumatized victim of a deranged billionaire. "He looked at me with such hate," she was telling her followers, dabbing dry eyes with a tissue. "I felt unsafe. We all did. This man shouldn't be running a lemonade stand, let alone an airline." Andre watched the stream for 10 seconds before closing it. He didn't feel anger anymore. He felt a surgeon's precision. He called his new VP of communications, a brilliant woman named Claire who had been stifled by the old regime. "Claire," Andre said, "are the press still outside?" "They've multiplied, sir. It's a circus. They're demanding a statement." "Good. Set up the podium in the lobby and connect the main screen to my laptop. I'm coming down." 20 minutes later, Andre Peterson stepped onto the podium. He had finally changed out of the hoodie. He wore a crisp, tailored navy suit, not to prove he belonged, but to show he was in charge. The flashbulbs were blinding. Reporters shouted questions over one another. "Mr. Peterson, is it true you assaulted a passenger? Are you stepping down? Why did you fire the pilot mid-air?" Andre raised a hand. The room quieted instantly. "I know you have questions," Andre began, his voice steady and projecting to the back of the room. "And you've all seen a video circulating online today. A video posted by Mrs. Galloway." He gestured to the massive screen behind him. Mrs. Galloway's video played on a loop, the edited version, showing Andre standing up, aggressively. "This video tells a story," Andre said. "It tells a story of an angry black man attacking an innocent elderly passenger. It fits a narrative that generates clicks, but it is a lie." He pressed a button. "This is the truth." The screen changed. The high-definition security footage from the cabin played. The audio was crystal clear. The room watched in stunned silence as Carter Sterling was shown screaming insults. They saw him snatch the headphones. They saw Mrs. Galloway not cowering in fear, but rolling her eyes and laughing when Sterling made a racist joke about Andre's shoes. Then, the footage cut to the cockpit audio. The reporters heard Captain Miller's dismissal. They heard the conspiracy to remove Andre simply because he didn't look the part. When the clip ended, the silence in the lobby was heavy. "I didn't buy this airline to stroke my ego," Andre said, gripping the podium. "I bought it because I was shown, in real time, that the culture of this company was rotten. I was judged by my clothes and the color of my skin, and when I tried to use my voice, I was threatened with arrest." He looked directly into the camera, knowing Mrs. Galloway was watching. "Mrs. Galloway edited that footage to destroy my reputation. She libeled me to gain followers. As of 5 minutes ago, my legal team has filed a lawsuit against her for defamation of character. We are seeking damages in the amount of $20 million, which happens to be the exact value of the endorsement deals she just lost." A murmur of shock rippled through the crowd. "Furthermore," Andre continued, "Meridian Air is no more. As of tomorrow, we are rebranding to Apex Airways. Our new motto is Dignity in the Skies. We are implementing a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, not just for passengers, but for staff. If you judge someone by their appearance on my planes, you walk. Period." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I kept my seat," Andre said softly. "Now, I'm making sure everyone else gets to keep theirs, too." He walked off the stage. The aftermath was swift and brutal for the antagonists. Carter Sterling was denied bail due to flight risk. His real estate empire crumbled as investors pulled out, unwilling to be associated with an embezzler who had been exposed on national television. He spent his days not in a first-class suite, but in a holding cell with very little legroom. Captain Miller and Jessica, the flight attendant, found themselves blacklisted from the aviation industry. The footage of their conduct became a case study in training modules for what not to do. And Mrs. Galloway. The internet is a fickle beast. The moment the full footage was released, the tide turned. The queen of first class became a pariah. Her comment section was flooded with the raw footage of her laughing at Sterling's racism. She lost her brand deals. She lost her social standing. She was forced to sell her house to pay the legal fees for the defamation suit Andre refused to drop. Andre Peterson didn't just fix the airline, he transformed it. Apex Airways became the highest-rated carrier in the world, known for its diversity and its ironclad protection of passenger rights. And every time Andre flew, he still wore his hoodie. He still sat in seat 1A. But now, when he walked on board, nobody asked for his ticket. They just said, "Welcome home, boss." And that is the story of how one man turned a moment of disrespect into $1 billion lesson in karma. It's a powerful reminder that you should never judge a book by its cover, because you never know if that quiet passenger in the hoodie is actually the one who owns the plane. Andre Peterson showed us that true power isn't about shouting with the loudest. It's about standing your ground and having the receipts to back it up. What would you have done if you were in Andre's shoes? Would you have walked off, or would you have bought the whole airline? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of massive revenge and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a story where the arrogant get exactly what they deserve. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.